Hi everyone. I'm out here in the woods. It's the season of plenty, and it's the forest is full of my favorite food, and I've managed to find quite a lot of bow leads out here. First and foremost, I wanted to thank every one of you who helps make the live channelings such beautiful unfoldings of meaning, and I'm always surprised when I come out of them just. The threads being interwoven and then explained in those processes. So thank you so much, everyone. And if you haven't been there before, I highly encourage you to join in. It's a lot of fun. Um, I've gotten the question on partially how I channel, but also how to channel. Quite a lot of times from different people. So I think I might just try to go into the subject. I think there are a lot of channelers out there, and there's very different techniques. To me, the golden standard of trance channeling, or at least galactic trance channeling, is definitely Rob Gothia or the ET Whisperer, and you can head on over to his YouTube channel, and I'm pretty sure there are some excellent tutorials on a lot of this stuff, and Rob's also just an amazing guy, which kind of comes through in his videos, and he's a really excellent channeler. So that is it's quite fascinating that there are so many approaches to it, but you will notice that what he also describes, and what I've heard from a lot of channelers, and it is also my own personal experiences, that there is usually an element of contact someplace. That is to say that often people will simply have this spontaneous experience of being um, in the presence of beings. That is to say that one or more of your guides will appear and approach you in a situation where you are open to that experience. And for most people, it happens in a type of meditative experience, but I believe it can happen anywhere and for any reason. But it's usually also it follows a crisis of depersonalization. So where the individual has had a quite a large personality crisis in order to bring this through. Then of course you can essentially channel everything, and you will also find that there are a lot of people who maybe channel things that I wouldn't even necessarily come in contact with, because it doesn't really register on that specific area in which I'm interested in it. And I think it's interesting that every phenomenon, even as small and esoteric a one as this one, has a lot of different offers. And I think it's worth noting that since, of course, what we are essentially dealing with is a lot of unverifiable claims coming through human vessels, then please always turn your attention to that resonance you feel within. Ye shall know them by their fruits, as it was written, right? Which essentially means that the way you can discern whether or not you feel you should interact with this information, or try to to somehow incorporate it into how you understand things and live your life, is essentially whether or not it resonates with you. And that's that universal message that has been coming through from a lot of different extra dimensional sources, which is the development of telepathy, or that emotional understanding, which is something more than a verbal understanding, and in which you can essentially discern what is true for you and not. And that's also how I interact with these entities. So it is more of on an intuitive, emotional aspect, that it is necessarily conscious. And unless I'm trying to get really specific about what I'm trying to get clear for myself through this work, or unless I'm channeling for others, I usually won't phrase it into words. I'll just have these energetic understandings and exchanges with it that somehow takes place in the heart, but also has components of the other chakras. And usually the way I experience these entities is also mainly emotional, so their energy is present, and then uh, visually after that. So you could think of the way you would perceive energetically the world. So vision without content, it's within that space. So when I close my eyes, it will be much more easy for me to call forward the Arcturians, for instance. Um, I will usually, and I have talked about keeping your vibration high, because there is, of course, a resonance pattern in which entities you resonate with, that you can then allow to come through. What I usually do is I meditate for, I preferably at least 7 minutes, but usually 20 minutes before I channel. Um, and that kind of helps to clear all that out. And there I will usually also have a sort of unspoken intention of bringing through exactly this energy. So I will start establishing that energetic link even before I jump into the state. And then when I jump into the state, and this is, I don't actually really remember how other people experience it, because I've gotten so used to these energetic overloads. So what I'm able to do, and I used to faint from actually having these energetic overloads some years back, and now my body has just gotten used to it. But it's if I take a deep breath and then I pack it into to my torso, I sort of feel that vibrational rising, and that universal spirit coming into me, and my personality dissolving, and then what you could think of as the vortex or the rainbow bridge, this type of multidimensional space, actually opens up in a, yeah, it's almost physical in front of me, and in that space I kind of load my own energy, and then receive the energy of the entity that's coming through, and then that sort of takes place within me, and you can see the shaking that often takes place is also that accommodation of that high vibrational energy that wants to come through. So that is essentially how I channel, and then you could think of it as I sort of lasso the energy first. When I have a hold of it and I then start speaking, it becomes very natural for me to simply let that energy grow out. And the longer I channel, the more in the back seat I will situate myself. So for instance, when we do a 2 hour live stream like we did recently, it's very little that I remember except for like the last parts coming out of it, because I'm in that intense beaming energy flow, and I am sort of present with what's going on and registering emotionally myself, my responses to the questions being posed and how the entities interact with them, and that sense of amazement of the synchronicity that goes into it. But essentially, I am somewhere else, and you could think of it. I was very conscious of this when I first experienced it, that it is as if my identity, or the entity called Mess, that guy who has a social security number and an address, and related to certain people and have certain relationships and experiences. That guy is usually situated in the front of the head right here, and then you will see that beaming of inspiration, a universal consciousness being resided in the back of your head around the crown area. And what I then usually do when I enter into that ecstatic space where I fill myself up with cosmic energy is I sort of switch them around. So I will become seated in the back driver's seat, sort of managing the inspiration, and then this entity will come forward to operate the interpersonal circuits, and it's a very funny type of teamwork. Like I truly really enjoy it. It's also kind of a taxing practice, of course, but it is. I truly enjoy it, and I hope you can sense that I find it so exciting and so funny to work with, and again knowing them by their fruits, because sometimes, of course, I also worry that if this is serving people or not, because I really, well, it doesn't matter if it just well, if you're just viewing it for your amusement, then good on you. But of course, like if if it's something that's pushing you into a direction that isn't helping you, I of course feel sort of responsible for that. And that's why I also kind of get a little scared when people start asking questions about government conspiracies and stuff, because I kind of get frightened that there are other channelers out there who are beaming in a lot of frightful paranoid stuff to keep people afraid. And I want to say that energetically, that's a, that's a very very old game of any type of sedentary religion. You could almost call it like organized religion when it corrupts, right? That you have that game of actually inducing fear into people and then offering to alleviate it for payment, or attention, or whatever. And there I would simply again uh, just, well, try to see if it resonates within you, and if you're consuming too much information that actually makes you feel fearful and small and impotent, then that's probably not the information for you, and then that information is essentially serving the agenda of keeping you afraid. So that's just when you interact with these entities, you can, you are in the driver's seat and you have the power, because essentially they're extensions of you, and in this moment you're the one who's the most important of your entire spirit family, a family of guides of all the incarnations you have had, because you're the one that's incarnate. So you're the one that are offering, dense material experiences, being that bridge between the material and the non-material, and your guides are very very excited about that in general. And so a lot of the stuff about channeling is essentially that if you feel compelled to it, then it will somehow call you out. But there are these techniques which can be quite helpful if you want to bring yourself into that depersonalized space where you want to go. And some of the easiest, most hands-on techniques is, for instance, the breath of fire. So if you work yourself up to doing 3 minutes a day, and you can start by 1 minute by doing that classic Kapalabhati breath, where you keep your arms up at approximately 60 degrees, and then active exhalations and passive inhalations through the nose. So while you pump your stomach, and after having done that for 3 minutes, you inhale, and then you bring your thumbs to cross and you tighten your root lock, so all the lower aspects of your body, or your torso, and then you hold it in for as long as you can, and then exhale and leave it out. And if you start working that experience into your daily life, I promise you, within a very short time, you will begin to see some very, very radical changes in the way you perceive reality, and the way you feel in contact with yourself. But it might, also full disclosure, it will probably, one of the first effects will also be that it will bring up some issues or awareness in your body that might feel misaligned. Another very potent type of technique is the type of mantra meditation they use in transcendental technique, and I'll just I'll just give it to you, because they charge like a lot of money for it. Essentially, it's just sitting down for 20 minutes a day, and then having a randomized sound that has no attached lexical meaning to it. So just a sound, and it could be clunk, for instance, or whatever you want, some sound that resonates with you, and you can even invite your guides in to let it to let it come forward, and do that for 20 minutes 2 times a day, just sitting there, and every time your mind begins to wander, or then return to the mantra. That's also a very very powerful and very easy meditation technique. So those are things you can do to try to get into this state where you will, I promise you, you will be contacted by your guides. And then notice that we are all channeling all the time. So it's actually what you are likely wanting to get to is that place of certainty within yourself, where you feel in contact and aligned with your higher self. And it does in many ways better that I feel much more on track after I have begun channeling, and much more directly guided than that sense of lost confusion, which almost seems like a faint memory. That doesn't, of course, mean that I don't have a lot of problems, because if I didn't, it would be no fun living, right? But It's more of a problems of a selective nature also, which makes them a lot more fun. Um, but you will experience that calling coming forward to you if you begin working some of these techniques. And then there is, of course, perhaps the easiest but also the most important technique, and it's the technique of prayer. And notice that prayer doesn't have to be verbalized. There is that, instruction that your heavenly Father knows what your heart wants, and that is essentially true. So, but prayer is a specific modality in which you put yourself into a clear receiving mode to the universe. It's quite different from meditation, where you try to clear yourself out, because prayer is in a way aligning your intention with your actual perception. So it is that way of sort of, well, filling your vessel with the intention of holding a specific type of content within this lifetime, which you could also call a blessing. Um, and I really perceive the channeling that way, that it is in many ways a blessing, both bestowed upon the channeler, but also hopefully on the people who listen to it and are moved by that energy, because it is actually intended to somehow mold open those structures of perception, which we hold to be, which we hold as true, and then point us to different things. And that's also a final disclaimer, is that don't necessarily attach too much vivacity to these things. I allow myself, and it took. Of course, I'm completely immersed in it, and I really love that this information is available, and it does a lot of really interesting things, eye-opening, perception-changing things for me. But I allow the personality called Mads to be skeptic to the degree that there's a point of him who doesn't believe any of this, and that's simply to hold that sort of tension between, well, skepsis and revelation or knowledge, that we are all always to some degree stuck in the middle, and we have to make our own decisions, and we have to feel our way with our hearts there. And it's not the holy grail in any way. Like I would definitely, if you want to understand social dynamics, you would probably be better off studying economics or sociology than you would be listening to the Arcturians. But I do in many ways perceive it as a type of creativity, inspired creativity, always almost what you would call uh, mythopoiesis or mythopoieia in Greek. So that sense that it's the birth of myth. It's actually that place where the infinite touches us with ideas and structures and visions and places we can go, and then guide us in that direction. And I think that's my impression, far more than the Arcturians, for instance, are working to actually, well, begin open contact. They might do that, but what they are working to is bringing us to a place of vibrational alignment with ourselves. And in that process, it will be easier and easier for us to also contact some of these races that, to my best impression, have been physical once in the universe and are now somehow able to come through and deliver these messages. But of course, through those channels and modes of perception which we are able to apprehend. So there's always like a greater mystery going on behind whatever is revealed. And I think that's very much the joy, that however deep we go down the rabbit hole, what we end up is actually finding that magic mirror within ourselves that's shining back, and that's asking us to try to understand and remember, and to try to feel what it is that we actually are, and who it is that we actually feel we should be, and that is calling for us to express itself in the world. So with that talk about channeling, and I think I managed to turn over most of the rocks that I wanted to, and I hope it made sense for those of you who have been asking. and I wish everyone as much sunshine as I am fortunate to receive in this moment. So much love out there. See you in another timeline.